Welcome to episode 1 of a new podcast going to be called Stuck at a Red Light, where we drive around and get hung up at some red lights and we just talk about current events, traffic lights, blue-collar work, anything and everything that we can come up with. This may not always be the setting to every podcast episode, but it is the setting to today's episode. So, let's get right into it. So, a question that I get pretty often is going to be, how do I get into this line of work, and is it worth it? Is it rewarding enough? And what is it financially? Does it pay well enough too? What's the pay of it? Well, traffic lights, unfortunately, there's not as much money as you would believe into it all. So I'm gonna just start off from the beginning. Prior to working on traffic lights, I was working at shipbuilding there in Pascagoula, Mississippi, where I kind of just grinded my teeth a bunch and spent a few years, handful of years out there, where you just, as an apprentice, it was starting to feel real hard to find people I can learn off of anymore in my trade. And I was even overworking and working circles around a bunch of journeymans, so I was making a little bit less than them, while half the time having to come back and redoing their work. So there's a lot of grinding my teeth there, to where I just finally had enough, quit the shipyard, and found a contractor that works on traffic lights here in the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And one of their big things was they would help get a Class A CDL, and I always had aspirations of either doing lineman work or going in trucking or doing something a little bit different, but needed to obtain that Class A commercial driver's license. And this seemed to have been the easiest and quickest route to obtain that license. So I started with them with all expectations to quit after a couple months, and after I get my CDL for the most part, and then quit after a couple months after I obtain it, and then either go over the road or do something different. But it was going to be the more affordable route of getting my CDL than going to a trucking school or, doing it by myself or anything like that. This was like the best route. And while, getting my Class A, I can also get paid while I'm doing some work. The pay was a drastic difference though. I mean, I was making dang near 3 times as much as their starting rate was. And I didn't really argue for it. I had construction experience, the whole 9 yards. But they were starting out at $12 an hour. And I was like, well, I'm only going to be here for a few months anyways, because I'm going to get my Class A. I wasn't telling them that, obviously. But immediately was going to leave after I got it, and knew if I worked hard, I'd get it pretty quick. So within like 30 days of being with the company, I obtained my Class A. But I was also enjoying who I was working with and what I was working on, and kind of found a little bit of a passion where, again, at the shipyard, felt like I should have been making a difference because you're building Navy vessels and Coast Guard vessels. But I didn't feel anything like I was making any kind of difference, and I didn't see any results on the difference I would have been making building those vessels, where coming out and working on traffic lights and being around knowledgeable people while working on them, I was able to quickly find a passion and say, hey, I'm making a big difference. I can see it in the communities as people drove by, and we're upgrading the traffic infrastructure or the traffic lights in their cities, and people are excited for everything we're doing, are curious about what we're doing too. We're putting up cameras at red lights, and we're putting up radars, and are installing new traffic lights altogether. People are like, what is this thing you're hanging up on this pole? And you get to educate people too. Sometimes you play little games where you're like, yeah, this is for running red lights, and they'll ticket you, or their facial recognition and all these radars are capturing your speed as you drive by. That's a little bit of funny stuff every now and again when people ask. But other times, most of the time, you're just telling them, it's for vehicle detection. So when you actually pull up to the stop bar at a red light, this item right here is going to pick up your vehicle's presence, and it's going to quickly give you a red light. And immediately they're all like, Oh, I really appreciate that. We hate the red lights coming through town here. They ain't been worked on in forever, and I feel like nobody maintains them, and we catch every red light when we're driving through the city, or it takes forever to get a green light when you're pulling up to one on the side street. So it was uniquely different, where you get to see the results of what you're working on very quickly versus never seeing the results of what you're working on at the shipyard building the Navy vessels. And again, pay was bad, but I was a lot happier working on red lights than I was there, which also made me want to stick around for a lot longer and continue my job working with them for how long I did, was because I was around guys that I enjoyed working with, knowledgeable guys, hard workers, and we all just got along, and I was able to learn. Every day I was able to come out and learn something new and keep my hands moving, and, you know, work never really dried up, so we just constantly stayed busy and constantly stayed working, which was great. So, long story short, the question is really, you know, how do you get into this line of work? Well, that's pretty much how I got into the line of work. I wanted to get my CDL. This company was hiring for it, and I just stuck around. And that's just how a lot of people can get into the line of work too. I mean, find a contractor. There's contractors all over each state that are going to be looking for employees. I mean, they're always constantly looking for employees and finding people that can actually show up and perform on the job and get production moving. And then every city and every state, you know, the DOTs are always looking for more people to maintain the traffic lights that the state has to maintain. And if you live in a city that has traffic lights, I bet you they have an electrician or somebody that's there to maintain those lights, and they're hiring people to do just that. So find your way into that so you can get familiar with the traffic light systems. And while you're working on it, if you want to excel and move up, and depending on which direction you want to move up, you can do what I did and just always say yes to overtime, always say yes to side jobs, anything where I can learn as much as I can in the field and quickly, you know, outperform other people at the company, and then jump up into like a foreman spot, which is a bit different than like your typical union foreman job where, you know, a foreman's like in a desk always, or in the truck, just always like scheduling out work and handling their daily duties and their paperwork and everything. Out here, majority of the time, you're going to be on your tools side by side with the guys and training guys, plus getting all your paperwork, plus, you know, anything and everything else you got to deal with, making sure your schedule is lining out right, making sure you have all your orders set up for the stuff you need, materials you need. I mean, you have all the responsibilities, plus you're going to stay on your tools for majority of every contractor you're going to work for as you move up. But as you move up, so does the pay move up. So from making $12 an hour to, you know, you'll end up here in South Mississippi, you know, our pay rate really kind of capped off around $70,000 a year was the salary. Where in different states you may see more than that, but again, you can quickly excel as long as you show up, do your job, and try to perform it at the best to your abilities. That's one of the routes I would recommend going, because you don't need education, you don't need to go into debt for that. But then there is also the route of, while you're working on it, and maybe the best route that you can is also go to school at the same time while you're working on these traffic lights. And if you can find a city or the state would happily fund you going to school, or a contractor that would maybe, you know, pay for it as long as you're going to their related, you know, job, then you can go to school for civil engineering and then pick traffic as your engineering degree for it, and learn all the book work and everything else you need to learn about these traffic light systems while you're working, still getting paid. And then hopefully the company and or city or state that you're working for at the time, they'll also be funding the schooling that you're going to, because they want you in that next role up, whether it's going to be an estimator if you want to move up to that, and becoming more knowledgeable of the systems and the funding to all of it is something you need to know. So there's schooling for that and bidding, the whole 9 yards, and even the state, obviously. They want engineers and as many as they can get. And then there's engineering firms out there where if you want to jump ship after, you know, getting your degree, you can jump ship and go to a private engineering firm, or, you know, stick around with the state. You can do stuff with your degree and hopefully not go into debt while getting that degree is the best route to go if that's your aspirations of moving up while in the traffic signal industry. And then obviously you can jump to manufacturers and jump to wherever you would want to jump from there. So some manufacturers, they do have their own like signal technicians and maintenance guys, and really and truly it's like finish up stuff that do the turnovers and, you know, make sure their products are set up properly, train people on their products, the whole 9 yards. A lot of manufacturers are going to have that, but you're really going to also need, and they kind of combine that with a salesman at times, but you're really going to need field experience to jump into that. So that's another route you can go. Start with a contractor, start with the city as a maintenance technician, get your hands dirty, you know, learn a thing or two, and then say, hey, you know, Wavetronics is hiring for a sales / technician on their product. So you can go jump to Wavetronics, or Temple's hiring for a technician or a factory worker, or, you know, all these other places that are going to be hiring just as well. You know, it's a small industry, but it is a large enough scale where you can find employment, especially once you get your feet out here and into the traffic signal industry. You kind of start meeting everybody pretty quick, where it wouldn't be hard to kind of jump ship and go somewhere, depending on what your aspirations are and what you want to do with your career. So look out there, because there's definitely a bunch of contractors that are always hiring. I'm sure you can find one local. If you can't, if your city has traffic lights, I'm sure they got a electrical department. These people are driving like crazy out here. Did y'all see that? I mean, look, that's kind of the cool part. It is raining. Y'all need to drive safe and everything. It's been raining for a minute. That dude needs some new tires if he couldn't keep traction there. Anyways, that's a bit of my recommendations. Depending on which route you want to go, there's a lot into it. But the first route is getting out here, getting your hands dirty, knowing how to wire up a traffic light, knowing how to dig out the foundations, knowing how to do all the conduit, pull the cable, where everything needs to go, the circuitry of everything, install the cameras, install the radars, the underground loops, do the cabinet pads, do the pedestrian heads, do everything at the intersection, get real fresh on everything, know what you're doing. There's certification courses you can go to between IMSA, get your traffic control supervisor certifications. There's so many things you can keep doing to excel you in these positions, and what you should be doing as a person trying to excel inside of the traffic signal industry. And what's the worst that's going to come from it if you're not into it after 6 months of working? You got a bunch of paychecks. If you don't like what you're doing anymore, well, I mean, it's not like you spent too much time invested into it. You can pursue other things and maybe even find connections. We had a guy, one time he saw what another contractor was doing on a job we were working on, and he was like, man, I'm really not liking what I'm doing anymore. I kind of feel like I'm just stuck. And he asked that other contractor, he's like, but I love what y'all are doing, and the earth moving and laying asphalt, this and that. I was like, you know, if y'all are ever hiring, can you let me know? A couple weeks later, he's working for that contractor now. So you can find quick connections. You can always find work. You're never going to be dried up on work, especially if you're a motivated individual. You're always going to be out there doing some kind of work. Unfortunately, the cold months kind of start getting slow for the asphalt people. We used to end up trailing behind and getting kind of slow during the winter seasons as well, because we work behind a lot of the asphalt companies. But with new types of detection, with new stuff like that, as long as we can pour concrete if it's above freezing, then we have stayed pretty busy all year round ever since about 5 years ago. COVID, when that happened, I mean, we never slowed down. We never missed a beat. We were out here working. I wish I was doing these videos at the time, because we never stopped working during the pandemic, and we just kept moving, you know, and kept doing what we were doing. It was actually nice, all the work. We had less traffic demand than ever at the time. Less people were driving. Fuel prices, you know, came down super cheap, and we were able to get these jobs done pretty quick and would knock them out pretty quick as well. So for everybody else, it was an unfortunate event. For us, it really kind of just like took off. Ever since 2020, everything took off from there. And my goodness, these people just cannot drive today. I tell y'all what. And same with a lot of other contractors. You know, I know a lot of the ones we were working under, they were like, hey man, we don't even know what to do when somebody gets sick either, but nobody's telling us to shut down, so we're still working. And in Mississippi, we were just required to work the whole time. We couldn't shut down what we were doing. We still had to maintain traffic lights. We still had to build new traffic intersections, the whole 9 yards. So COVID really spiked up everything, and prices went up after on pretty much everything in the business. Lead time started going up and everything in the business. I mean, from purchase time to finish time of building a traffic light used to be like 2.5 months, where we'd have ended up having poles, cabinets, everything delivered, ready to go. If we had all the equipment ahead of time, we could knock out an intersection in a month. Now we're waiting a year for these cabinets, you know, the traffic cabinets, and we're waiting. Poles have actually been pretty decent. Valmont's hasn't slowed down that much, but about 3 months or so for poles. And somehow some of the steel manufacturers, they were taking 8 to 9 months for certain brackets we would need. So it was often we were waiting on one little piece to finish a project, or even get started on a project at time. A lot of these jobs we were able to get out there, do the concrete, because that never slowed down. But then waiting on poles or waiting for that cabinet, or we'd have to find an old cabinet and kind of temporary everything, and then after a year come back and swap a cabinet and swap a couple heads around. The signal heads always had a decent time coming in, but then the brackets and the hardware to actually mount the heads, I mean, we couldn't get ahead. We would order extra. We would order everything on a job when the submittals would get released. And it was still a hard time to get ahead. So that's things we're seeing in the traffic signal industry now. When back in the day, it used to be like, materials here, we can just balls to the wall, work, and finished products going to be up in a month and a half. Where now it's like piecing it all together. You may see companies go out now, just put the concrete foundations down, maybe set the poles, but never set any of the traffic lights or anything like that for another 8-10 months. And you're just wondering what's going on with this. And it's just what it is right now. There's not a lot of control that we have and say so into that. Hopefully things get better, because they haven't just yet. But work's also been more than ever since COVID as well. I mean, there ain't been a time where the contractor I used to work for at this point hasn't been busy. You know, there used to be times where it's like, if we don't have enough work, we can't make a scheduled 40-hour, you know, week. When that hasn't been the case in 5-6 years now. And again, if I would have been making these videos at the time when everybody was indoors, just sitting around, not doing much of anything, wearing their mask, ooh, man, we'd have a good amount of subscribers. But you know, people would be following along with it then more than ever, because I mean, what else were they gonna do? At least I was able to go outside and still work however much I could work, and everything would work out great. I was still able to feed my family during the time of it. So, and then a lot of people also ask about, you know, what got you into, you know, making some YouTube videos or these Facebook videos, TikToks and stuff like that. And I've always had a little bit of a passion to film and just share my life or my story or what I'm doing with people online, whether that's weird or not. It's something I enjoy doing. And it all kind of kicked off where, we're working on a traffic light. My guys are up in the bucket. They're working on a signal head, and I'm just, at the time I was losing weight and just trying to stay active and everything. So I'm like running up and down the road. It's 3 a.m. Ain't no vehicles around. So I'm just running down the middle of the road for shits and giggles to get some steps in and stay a little active. And then I'm like pulling out the phone too. You can like clearly see the cutout for the inductive loop and the left turn lane. I just quickly say, hey, this is an inductive loop and this is what it does, and this is the reason why you're not getting a green light is because you're not sitting on this thing, or just explain an inductive loop real quick. And that video did well, took off, and then that kind of just started the niche where it's like, people are into this. Let me just keep showing. If they like the inductive loops, they're gonna love the cameras, they're gonna love the radars, they're gonna love this and that. And then all the way up to a point where I'm like, I just gotta throw a GoPro on my forehead and show people what we do, because people are interested in it. Clearly enough are interested in it, at least. If the videos are taking off and doing well, the construction side's got to be pretty entertaining as well, and people are gonna be curious about what we do, and just traffic lights in general. So slap a GoPro on my head, and the rest is, to be continued for the most part too, because we've made hundreds of videos at this point of working and building on traffic systems, traffic light systems, and everything that comes, everything to piece everything together to make it happen. And we continue, and the educational videos that we're going to continue making, plus the manufacturing side, and what's more into the traffic signal industry than just installing the red lights, so pretty great so far. Definitely been enjoying it. Met plenty of great people from it now too. Built this whole community. We're gonna keep building it. And to think, man, none of it would have ever have happened if I would have quit after about 45 days of working with a contractor I worked for. When I got my CDL and wanted to go work on whatever else, just glad I fell in love with traffic lights. And again, the environment, really just blue collar work I've always had a good passion for. And I think a lot of other people could, have the ability to adapt that passion for just building stuff with your hands and making incredible things. And I feel like anybody and everybody should be motivated to do that, because it's incredible to be able to drive down the road and be like, I worked on that. I helped this city. I've been here, done this. I've done the best I can. I've hopefully improved the infrastructure for these people as well. Even if they are a hair, we help them all out. Traffic lights don't see politicians, they just see red, yellow, and green. And then sometimes they go into flash and nobody knows what to do. One thing I will say, if you're looking to get into this line of work, if you are scared of heights, if you're afraid of heights and to the point where you just can't do it, then this line of work is just going to be pretty hard for you. There's a lot of ditches to be dug, a lot of conduit to be ran, so I'm not saying you can't be jumped into it, but you're going to struggle on kind of moving up and doing the next thing with a company if you have a hard time getting into a bucket truck and then working over traffic at times, or working however you got to work. But you got to do it, so hopefully you're not afraid of heights and you can actually get out here and be productive. If not, you're going to be in a hole very often with the shovel and laying some conduit and stuff like that. You can make a job, you can make a career out of that. There's a bunch of people that are on boring machines 24/7. They make killer money doing so. So there's plenty of lines of work in the traffic industry that you can get into. You can go into overlaying and milling, or laying asphalt, earth moving. There's so much more into just the roads that we drive on than anybody gives credit for, and the amount of labor it takes to put what we have that our tires are riding on is just I don't think a lot of people understand the amount that it takes to accomplish what we get to have. We all take it for granted a little bit, but there's a lot of hard work and sweat that goes into it. Plenty of swamp ass days and plenty of days where you're freezing, just trying to stay productive and make a living. I mean, a lot of people out here just want to feed their families or want to buy the toys that they get to have and enjoy life comfortably. Nobody out here gets these free handouts. There's nothing like that in the blue collar industry. You got to work hard but the reward's there if the hard work's put into it. So I know we may have went on a little bit of a rant or rambled on a little bit, but that's the whole point of this podcast. And you're just getting to know me more, and I'm getting to know y'all more, and give y'all cover topics y'all want to know about. So if you have any topics you want me to go over, list them down in the description. This is something I'm able to film more on like a rainy day like it is today. I had a couple of videos that I planned on doing and wanted to get out and do this week. And unfortunately, the weather's not looking too great. It's just cold and wet. All it is around here in South Mississippi right now. But don't worry, next week it's probably going to be in the 80s and we're going to be sweating again. That's how the weather is here. But I'll let y'all guys go. I appreciate y'all for watching. And if you like this stuff, again, let me know in the comments down below what you want me to talk about, discuss, and I'm happy to do it. It'll more than likely go off the rails and go a little off topic pretty quickly. But if you like to hear me ramble, then I'm all for it. And I'm going to keep doing it. So, I mean, whether you like it or not, you're going to see them posted, because I'm going to keep posting them. Appreciate y'all for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.